And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Logic Apps Live May 2023. Seems like we are in a stride now. It's like 4 in the show, and we're going to see new faces on the show today, but also all of our friendly Logic FPMs in here. So for the show today, Kent, if you go to the next slide to talk a little bit about the agenda. Kent, we need you to get to, there we go. Thanks, man. So we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming events again, just as a reminder, right? On Logic Apps, both on Integrate and Aviators Day. Then we're going to talk about the Logic Apps going GA. We have a special guest here, Carlos, that is a software engineer on the Logic Apps Designer, to talk a little bit about like what is the experience to getting that live. Then Divya is going to be talking about the Logic Apps standard built-in connectors. So going to be concentrated this time on the custom connector and the API management connector, and she's going to have some demos as well. And we open to QA. So it might be like a small show for content-wise. That means it has more time for all your questions, right? With that, I think I'll pass it on to Path and for him to concentrate on. Oh, no, sorry, it's me. I'm all over the place today. So talking about the upcoming events, we have Integrate 2023 that is going to be starting in a week and a bit, right? And you're going to be if you're going to be there live, you're going to be finding Kent and Slava on the floor talking about all the improvements on Logic Apps. And there's still time for you to go and register both to live or remote sessions. So you can go to serverless360.com/integrate 2023 and find out the tickets. Tickets are still available. So the next one on our agenda. Yes.
I was just going to say, Wagner, just to add to that, we do have some pretty exciting announcements that we're going to be making at Integrate as well. So if people are wondering, is it worth it for me to go and attend, whether that's in person or remote? We've got a lot of interesting things that we've been working on that we haven't even talked about in these community sessions. So just a little bit of a teaser, but I'm pretty confident folks will be excited about it when they see it.
That's true. And the other thing is, we're not going to be able to talk about that for a couple of months, right? Because next session is going to be our Logic Apps Aviators Day. So we're taking that slot and the rest of the day during that day to run our Logic Apps Aviators Day. Talking about that, if you wanted to know a little bit more about what's going to happen and put it on your calendar, it's going to happen June 22nd. And you're going to find more information on aka.ms/Logic Apps Aviators Day. But just as a sneak peek, we have a list of all the presenters and the sessions. That's not the agenda in terms of order, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to see on the day. If you click on next one. There you go. So we're going to have a total of 12 sessions between MVPs, community members, and some people from our team. And you'll be able to see a bit more about that if you go to that website. With that in mind, now I think it's Part's time. I'll pass it on to him to talk about the GA designer.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Wagner. Yes, so I think I just wanted to go over quickly like what we have in terms of Designer GA and where we have GA'd as well. And I will do a quick preview of the VS Code experience that we have. And then we'll just look at the journey that we've undertaken for getting here, right? And getting all these UI improvements. And I think lastly, we would also love to hear what you think, right? So there is this file a bug feature as well when you're building workflows. So definitely leverage that and make sure that you let us know what you feel about it, or even like right now, just let us know your reactions. So with that in mind, I think the first point was open source and trust. We have pretty much all the issues today filed on Git, as I was saying. We want to make sure that we develop transparently, and also our code base is transparent, right? While we move towards new frameworks and really helped in like the onboarding experience. So we want to make sure that we operate on open source and trust as well. So and unified experiences. So we're making sure that the designer is GA'd across Logic App Standard and VS Code. Right now in consumption, it is still in preview. And the reason is because we want to make sure that all the flows that are already built in Logic App consumption are still going to be functioning and not breaking, right? We'll talk more about that. We've also set a threshold for that, which I'd love to discuss. And performance and accessibility was on top of mind. That was one thing that we weren't able to achieve with the previous designer. Now we want to guarantee that even from like any platform you want to build workflows from, right? From VS Code or Portal. And accessibility as well. So with the new token picker experience, like you can basically just use your keyboard to navigate to any of the dynamic content or expressions you want to use. You don't even need to use your mouse or anything like that. And with another feature that is going to be upcoming is going to be finding an action, which would help you like find any sort of an action in your massive workflow with just a Control F or some sort of button functionality through keyboard. And make sure that you also check out the blog from Travis. It highlights, like, it basically gives you a deep dive of what the new designer is capable of. And yeah, also like just more about the details that we're using on the front end as well. So with that in mind, let's move to the next slide. And that is going to be the demo for VS Code. It's pretty short, but I just wanted to highlight the functionality for token picker. Let me get this.
Parth, you needed to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm just doing that actually.
Awesome.
Thank you. Let me know if you can see my screen. Solid. So I have my local project here, and we have a couple of workflows. The first is, just going to be getting the message from a queue, and we'll be completing it, which is this one, and we'll be sending the response. But to begin with, we'll have an API which will receive this request and send a message in the queue. The use case I'm trying to achieve is just order processing, right? And make sure that the message is completed, and then we send the response. But here, if you just want to add, let's say an action and root spell check, and I will be able to just use up any of the values, as I said, through using that backslash, and should be able to just check if the price actually, and I don't know why I haven't passed in the price here. I should have. Let me do that. And there's going to be some int. We're going to do some price, which is going to be as well, let's say string, because it could be in currency as well, right? So $100. So I have my payload generated, and now what I wanted to make sure is that if the price is lesser than some threshold, we're just going to send it to a different queue. If it's greater than, we're going to send it to a different queue. And yet again, I'm going to use my dynamic content and get my price and make sure if that is greater than, let's say, 10,000, and I will have to actually make that as an integer. Now I think about it. Yes. And I will make sure that my queue is already connected, and I will just send the message into that particular queue. In this case, it is the receive small order. And I'm just going to put the content as well. As order number. And yeah, I think I'm just going to drag this guy here. Interesting. Just going to send another action. So basically, you can make sure that the API will send the message to a particular queue depending on the price and pass in the content accordingly. But yeah, I think I just wanted to make sure that there is that part, and also wanted to show you the expression editor. So if you wanted to do any manipulations as well, you can make sure that you can do that. But yeah, I think that's, we can move to the next slide then. If we can share the slides to share the journey.
There we go.
Thank you. So it's, are you able to still see my? Yeah.
Yeah, we have the slides up now.
Perfect. So August 2021, this whole journey began. Internally, we started understanding that we faced key problems, and we started interviewing customers. Right. It was my personal experience as well, which was not that great onboarding to Logic Apps, and then we were like, let's make sure that we achieve like where we can get to, right? And we conducted customer interviews, and what we found out were three main points. First of all, they did not have a good place to get started, so the template experience was quite a must. Second was they faced janky experience and also had, just trouble understanding the Logic Apps language, like which is specific to concepts like connector types, actions, triggers, and they needed a better educational experience, right, when they're building the workflows and adding these actions, which is what we targeted when we said that we're going to improve the performance as well as in the search and browse experience. The third thing, which is also on top of our mind, was that they faced trouble grouping the actions and triggers together to achieve the use case that they wanted to. So snippets came to mind, right? So these were like common industry patterns that are already defined, and they're basically a group of actions that you could just insert in the workflow like a template. So yeah, we face these common areas, but we prioritized in April 2022 that, hey, we want to make sure we focus on performance and how to also best introduce Logic Apps to customers to retain them, right? So we experimented with adding educational PCs, removing tabs, and choosing alternative wording, right, for connectors, and using those tags essentially. October was the first release of a new foundation. What used to happen in the old workflow designer is that whenever you would make a change in the action, it would cause a cascade of re-renders and essentially redo every single component in the workflow. And we moved to Redux store. So the state of the workflow is the Redux store, which really made sure that, hey, like we're focusing on that particular component that you're editing and guaranteeing that performance, right? And not that janky experience. December was like understanding that, hey, all of the issues that we're finding on GitHub, because people were able to file them now, we resolved those. And we also brainstormed the token picker and dynamic content experience, because we understood that it was yet again janky. It would just like sort of pop up, and it wouldn't be a good space for you to edit expressions. May, we delivered the expression and token picker, and we did the GA on standard and VS Code with optimal performance. And what we want to still make sure is that we drive consumption to GA, but we don't have a time yet in mind. We want to develop and make sure that all the issues are resolved. And the benchmark that we're setting is, if you have a workflow in consumption that is greater than 450 actions, which is a customer of ours is having that, with more than like 50 plus connections, would not break. So if you also have workflows like that, and if you're facing like breaking changes with the new designer on consumption, let us know. But that is the threshold we want to make sure we achieve before we go GA for consumption. But that's all I had. Thank you for the time, and I'll pass it on to Carlos to discuss more.
Awesome. So now we're going to have something a bit different for for what we've been doing so far is we bring in Carlos Castro Trejo, which is a software engineer with the Logic Apps UX, to have a quick fireside chat with us, right? About all of this, how it was the experience. So first of all, thanks for joining us, Carlos, and to be the first one of the software engineers to be live on the show. Well done. And do you want to introduce yourself, and then we have some questions for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm really excited. I didn't know like you guys used to have like these live meetings with the community. So I'm really excited about this. As you said, like my name is Carlos Castro. I have been working in the Logic Apps for about like a year and 2 months, almost like year and a half. I am mainly in charge of the VS Code extension. So of course, I also participate in the designer, but mainly I'm working in the VS Code extension.
Awesome. So I think as the first question that a lot of people would have is what was these challenges to get like all this new designer in place for the whole team? So like what the we see that it took us from August until now, right? So what took like that long? Because I can see that it's a quite daunting project.
Yeah, it's like a huge project. This project has been like the team have been working on it more than a year and a half, refreshing it and rewriting it. All the designer from the ground up and from scratch. It's like a huge challenge. We just not wanted to make it look better because it frankly looks better, but and feels better. But only not only that, we also wanted to, as Bart said, work on the performance and the accessibility of it. As you could see, like in the demo before, searching for the actions connectors seems to be way quicker, way more effortless. So it was like a huge challenge for it. We just not wanted to copy and paste it. And also we have some the Power Automate team also works with this designer, so it's like a partnership team. So making it work it for them also involves like a huge challenge, not just making it work it for us, like in the Azure portal and in the Logic Apps resource. Making it work them for them, it's also a huge challenge. Making it work it for VS Code extension also involves like a huge challenge. It's not just like we instantiate all of the code over there. And as Bart said, like we are looking forward for the GA in consumption. So that also involves another challenge for us, like making it work it over there.
Yeah, but I can see that it's been worth like having the same experience in all the places, starting to make a much better. There is like one comment here from Mustafa that are going to add again on the show. So like Mustafa was saying, well done guys with the new UI improvements. All of the new features are really helpful and improve the developer experience. So community is paying attention and seems like it's working quite well. So with one of the things that Pat has mentioned is the designer now is open source, right? So what was the thinking behind that decision? And since it's open source, how the community can contribute?
Yeah, a good part of this new redesign is that we are now open source. Mainly, I will say that being transparent and engage with the community. Now, like people, developers can also take a look at our repo, take a look on the issues that we have worked or have fixed it, raise some issues. So we are really looking forward for the community to participate in that repo. Like we want people, developers, let us know like the issues that they are facing, raising the issues. Also, I know like for sure that some VS Code users are developers. and some of them might know like the logic of the code, the logic behind creating a VS Code extension. So we are also looking forward, like if any user have an issue or a blocker, fork the repo, raise a PR for us. We can evaluate it, and if it works fine, they will be able to solve their own issues by their own. So that's a really good thing. Yeah, overall, I would say like engage with the community.
Awesome. And in this case, if people is facing any challenges, the best place to go is open an issue on GitHub.
Yeah, definitely. Open or raising an issue in GitHub is the way we triage the things that might be blocking our users. So that's the good way on letting us know anything that doesn't work in the designer.
Okay.
Or in the VS Code extension.
Mm-hmm. Because those two are the same repo, right?
Yeah, it's a mono repo. So yeah, both projects live in there.
Okay. So one of the comments that we got from customers that they got a bit scared for a little while is after GA, there was a lot of stabilization fixes. Like we run on a whole lot of things. And from one side, that could be a little bit scary because they were seeing like updates every day. But the other side, we're showing that we are actually looking at that and making sure that those fixes was in front of the customers as quick as possible. So maybe this is kind of a two-part question. First, how did you prioritize those all those fixes that you have during that time? Because I'm assuming that was a bit of a stressful time for you.
Yeah, definitely. Like for all the team, like going GA for the new designer is kind of stressful. We always want to prioritize based on urgency and also based on how many users are blocked based on that issue. I mean, like for VS Code, it's a little bit easier. People or users can always fall back to all versions, but for Portal, it's not that easy. So, like for making this GA, we have been prioritizing, as I said, like based on users being blocked on it, and we have been trying to make hot fixes on it. If it is something that is just is not a huge blocker, we have been triaging and moving on to the next release. If not, we have been working on hot fixes, making it release them as soon as we can.
Perfect. And now that it's stable, what is the cadence that we should expect both for the portal and for the VS Code experience? Do you have like a plan cadence? Was like when improvements happen, we're going to be deploying?
I mean, the plan is always in VS Code like once every 2 weeks. But like sometimes a hotfix happens. Sometimes some issues need to be released earlier and so on. So for VS Code, we have been targeting and we are targeting for once every 2 weeks, and I guess like for Portal, it will be kind of the same. I wouldn't take this on hard rock. It's always changing. It's always based on the issues that get blocked most of the users. But yeah, that I will say that.
And new features when they happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That takes a different cycle. And finally, I think my last question for you, that is a bit of a personal question. You've been working on that for 1.5 years, as you said. Like, what was the kind of the most proud moment that you get implementing that designer and the VS Code extension in general?
I will say like going public. It's like going open source. I mean, it's like a huge achievement. I have never been working on something like this before, and also like implementing going GA in the VS Code is like a huge milestone for not just for me, for the team. But yeah, like also I will say, looking like in another perspective, that this just not only like impacts like Portal, Azure Portal, it also impacts Power Automate team, and seeing that like users now, like we went to GA, seeing like users have been liking us, the new designer. It's I would say like for the team, it's like a huge milestone, one of the proudest moments that we have been working on something that community and users have been liking so far. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think Omar Quintero here says, this seems like a great team in Microsoft. So happy for you all, and keep up the good work. And Prijesh Raman is asking us to share the Git repo link. So I'll add that behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely. We are really looking forward for the community to engage with us. So yeah, so happy for the G8 release.
And just before we go to the next one last item here. Jorge Romero is saying, it's great to watch the UX engineer. It showed the technical perspective and the other side of the coin for us that using the product. So as a developer, I identify with him and looking forward for more. So no pressure for our friends, engineers at Microsoft. You set up the bar high now, mate. Cool. So back to the show. Thank you so much, Carlos. Any parting words?
Not really. Like I'm really happy to be here, showing the other side of the coin, showing what we have been working on, and looking forward to see those issues over there. Like they keep us moving forward to make the product better.
Thank you very much for joining us. And now pass it on to Divya to talk a bit about some of our new connectors. There we go.
Thank you. All right. So today I want to talk about what capabilities we provide when you do not find a connector out of the box. So I think in the last Logic App live session, we talked about how in Logic App Standard we have reached parity with respect to the out of box connectors. With ICE, where things that you were able to run in a VNet, you can do all of that in Logic App Standard too. So the next question comes in, like, what if I have my own custom services, or what if I want to connect to APIs that are within my VNet? And so to answer those questions, those scenarios, we have a couple of options. And there is no big right or wrong here, but depending on what your use case is, what your requirements are, probably these options would fit your needs. So the first one that I want to talk about is managed custom connector. This is the one that you are most familiar with for customers who are all using Logic Apps already, consumption or ICE. You are familiar with custom connectors. Even from Power Platform, this is a shared concept. So you have used these custom connectors. As you all know that for most scenarios, these custom connectors, you can use them for publicly hosted services. Uh, in cases where you have a service that is on-prem, you were able to still use these custom connectors, but you would have to deploy an on-prem data gateway on a VM that is in your VNet. So you had to manage and maintain an additional VM. And because the data gateway was on a separate VM, it had its own limitations in terms of throughput, in terms of payload that it would support. But it was still possible. If we look at the availability of this custom connector after you deploy it, it is available within that subscription and region. So it makes it very easy for you to deploy and then share it across your organization, across your business units. Um, when it comes to billing, custom connectors are charged similarly to how connectors are charged in our consumption SKU. That is, you pay based on the usage, based on the number of calls. And then custom connector infrastructure. These custom connectors are running somewhere, right? So they are hosted, they run into the multi-tenant environment that we Microsoft own. And therefore, because it's a multi-tenant environment, it's a shared environment where all of our customers are leveraging it, we have to put some limits on the number of calls by API connections. So as you all know, like, this capability is available to customers today. What was missing was that up until now, you were not able to use it from Logic App Standard. So with the recent release, we now have support for managed custom connectors from Logic App Standard as well. So if you had a custom connector that you were using from consumption and now you start using Logic App Standard as well, you would be able to use the same custom connector both from your consumption SKU as well as from Logic App Standard. So if you have a publicly hosted service, or if your intent is just to go with existing custom connector, this will now be supported. Next slide. All right, yeah. So as I said, you can use it from both the SKUs now. The other thing that I want to focus is the APIM connector. So this is APIM connector, again, was available in consumption, but now we have it available in Logic App Standard as well as a built-in connector. So I think in one of the previous sessions, I had talked a bit about the differences between a built-in connector and a managed connector. And so some of the key ones being that with built-in connectors, they run in the same process, in the same runtime as Logic App. So you share the same benefits in terms of like performance, throughput, and VNet integration, right? Whatever is available to your Logic App's runtime, the same capabilities are available for your built-in connectors as well. Which is why it makes it very easy if you were to use APIM connector to connect to your services that are hosted either on your VNet or publicly. You would be using APIM connector, which is built in. So that just makes it simple. Again, with APIM connector, once you have your service, you can use it from your Logic App, from across the Logic Apps. So sharing that is very simple, because, and I'll show it in the demo, but essentially you are creating your API and layer in the APIM, and that way it's centralized in the APIM and you have access to it from across the subscription and region. Since, as I mentioned, since it's a built-in connector, you do not have to pay any additional cost other than the Logic App's compute on which it's going to run. And it's a built-in connector, so you do not have these limits per API connection, per connection that comes with the managed connector. I think that I would say the thing to consider is that it does require you to manage another resource, another service, which would be an APIM instance. And if you were trying to connect to on-prem APIs behind a VNet, then you would need a premium instance of APIM. So that's where the considerations come in. If you already are using APIM, then probably it makes an obvious choice. But if you are not, then something to consider and keep in mind. And then finally, just to call out for the sake of completeness, HTTP connector, again, a built-in connector is available from Logic App Standard, which allows you to call your APIs within the scope of that application, right? So if you have REST APIs, if you have any APIs that are hosted in your VNet, you can easily call them using the HTTP connector, and it supports various types of identity providers and authentication methods as well. Only thing, the downside is that now, well, downside, or if that is a requirement, it may be actually a positive for you, where your API calls are limited to your application only, so you're not sharing it across your tenant in this scenario. So that's what I wanted to cover in terms of all the options you have available. And Wagner, can you move to the next slide? And we have published blog posts that covers each of these options in a lot more details. And so feel free to, when you're ready to like use them, there are of course a lot of setup and configuration that may be required. So you can always like go back to these blogs which covers all of that in details. But today I'll very quickly show you APIM connector and some of the setup and configuration that went in connecting to a service that is behind the VNet. All right. Let me go to the right place. All right. So here is my APIM instance, which is what I'm using to integrate to my APIs that are hosted behind the VNet. So if you look at my configuration, the key one is that because I'm trying to access APIs in the VNet, my VNet configuration for this APIM is set to internal. If you could go with external if the client or if the calling entity is public, but if the caller is also within a VNet, then you would choose the internal configuration here. And if I look at the API that I'm calling here, this is basically a web app that I've imported into my APIM. Creating this custom connector like with the other experience that we have, it is an experience where you bring in your open API like your Swagger definition or your WSDL definition, and then provide your authentication criteria, and that's all, right? So likewise in APIM, you would do something similar where you would provide you would basically import a web app and provide the web service URL and whatever other details you want to provide in terms of like authentication and security, and if you want to do any logging as well. And so here, this is my API, and I very quickly want to show you, like if I run this API right now from my browser, I will get a failure. So now I'm logged into my VM, which is also part of the same VNet. And as you can see, I can load this web service from my VNet here. And now, as part of the demo, what we are going to do is we are going to invoke one of the operations in this service through Postman. But before I do that, I want to show you the logic app from where I'm making this call. Quickly show you the VNet settings. So again, because this is a scenario where we are trying to call an API, as you can see that in this my logic app is connected to the same VNet, and I have private endpoints also enabled. This is optional, but I wanted to have as restricted environment, so I even have private endpoints enabled here. And after that, let's look at the workflow itself now. So to use the APIM connector, you basically select the action to call the API, and let me just change the connection and show you. So what you'll do here is like you basically select your APIM instance, and then it shows you all the APIs that you have here, right? So that's how you can use the same action, it's the same APIM action here, but sort of create your connector, create your custom connector for any of the APIs that are available in your APIM instance. And then once you select this API, you create the connection. And after you create the connection, what you will have is the list of operations available in that web app or in that service. So here in my service, I had all these options as I showed you before. So now I can pick and choose any option, and if the parameters are required, we'll do that as well as part of this process. So I already have this created, so I'm not going to add another one, but this is what I've created. I'm calling a get operation here. So if we go to the VM and if we invoke this logic app, it returns the get operation returns the objects that were already available here. So that's all my quick demo was around using the API management connector. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of like how you want to host your APIs, how what kind of policies and configuration you want to apply on your APIs. And I think that's what I like about API management, that if you're already using it, you're probably already managing your APIs with APIM. So creating a custom connector with APIM allows you to leverage the same set of same model for your custom APIs from Logic Apps as well. And very quickly, I want to show if you have a connector that you want to use from your Logic Apps, which was the first scenario that I had mentioned, where if you have a managed connector, you can use it from both Logic Apps consumption and standard. In that case, when you come to the designer, you basically choose the runtime as custom, and that's going to show you all the custom connectors you have in that region. So this would allow you to leverage your existing custom connectors, or to create custom connectors for your public services and use them from Logic App Standard. Yeah, so that's all I had in terms of multiple options to call to your APIs or services from Logic App Standard. Back to you, Wagner.
Not sure if it was just for me, but I think your audio was cut for a little bit, Divya.
Okay.
I thought I heard her, yeah, but
Okay, I think we have everyone back on the stage. Let me just bring Carlos as well, and we have a couple of questions just to finish the day here. There is a couple of questions about the things that could be possible on the designer, and I'll add here just for your benefit, Carlos. But I'm assuming that the answer for both of them is please open that on GitHub, right? So the first one is like how hard it would be that to disable one action inside the designer instead of removing. And the next one would be would you add a loading icon on the connections page for the standard Logic apps, right? So that Mustafa said that having a heart attack every time that it shows empty until it closes the connection in the grid. I think I had that heart attack as well, but that would be the best idea for that would be add this to our list there so we can prioritize.
It would also be good to know Like what? Like so there's a feature called static results that allows you to
The
essentially
next
like have a
question that we
mock.
have, I think, is for you, Divya. Rob Bauman is asking, the built-in file connector is only possible in ASC. Are there many customers using it? Is there any major downsides to this approach?
Yeah, so I think there is another question on the
Yeah,
similar.
it seems like your microphone is not working right now. Kent or myself, you want to
I
take
can
that one?
hear Divya.
Okay, so I'll go ahead then. Yeah, so there was another question about using the connector in ACE, APIM connector. So I guess like the answer high level is that most of the connectors that are available in Logic App Standard, you can use them regardless of where you're deploying your standard, right? Whether you deploy it on Workflow Standard Plan or an ACE. So the answer in general is yes. File system connector is one exception where it is only available in ACE. It's not available with Workflow Standard Plan. So the answer is to your question is that you can only actually use it from ACE at the moment. There are no limitations or downsides with this approach. Our customers are choosing both the approaches, Workflow Standard Plan or an ACE environment, for using Logic App Standard. I can take one more question, which is on the which is from Big Mickey. HTTP connector and APIM connector, are they doing the same thing or they have different use cases? Behind the scenes, even APIM connector is making HTTP calls. So that way you could say that in a way they are doing similar stuff. But the only advantage you get with APIM connector is that, as I was mentioning before, you have a more like centralized management of your web services, of your APIs. And the other one is that if you want to share your APIs, your services across your applications, then APIM connector is a better choice because you can easily do that with APIM connector. With HTTP connector, you would have to recreate that in every app. So these are some two key differences that I see between one or the other.
So Divya, I think there was another question. Can we use APIM connector in ACE? I think you might have covered that, but just in case.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, right, like for all the connectors, you can use them both from Workflow Standard Plan and from ACE, and the experience would be same in both the hosting models. Prajesh has a question that if you use custom domain name in ACE, APIM connector is not working. I think I'll need a follow-up on that with you. So if you do not mind, can you put an issue on GitHub, and then we can take it from there, and you can tag me or any one of the team members we have here.
All right. Any other questions, folks? Otherwise, we
Brent,
can.
I think you were asking a follow-up question. I think we weren't able to hear you completely. But did you want to ask that? I think it was in the...
Gotcha. Sure. Thanks, Parth. Yeah. So it was related to like disabling an action. And so the sort of question / comment I had was like today we do have the static results feature that allows you to essentially like mock basically the output of a specific action. So in some ways it actually kind of works like disabling because it's not going to actually execute that action. Like say if it was a connector. So it'd be good to understand like if that doesn't meet people's needs and if not, why? Just so that we can better understand maybe that's something where we can tweak that experience if there's sort of a use case that's not being addressed by that. And yeah, so I guess if there's no other questions, we can give some time back. But thanks everyone for joining. And don't forget, we've got the Integrate conference coming up, so there'll be some interesting things happening there. We also have the Aviators Day, which is going to happen next month at this time, so fourth Thursday of the month in June. I believe that's June 22nd. And go ahead and check out that link that we had shared earlier just to check out the sessions. And we are going to be streaming that. It'll be available on demand as well. So be sure not to miss that. It'd be a great opportunity to see some of your fellow community members present and share their perspectives. And then we've got an internal session as well by another engineer, Swecha, who's going to be talking about a brand new feature. I'll let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So custom code inside of Logic Apps. So you're not going to want to miss that.
And I'm back just on time to say bye. My machine broke. And that's why we have a community to run this as well. I think that's it for